I thought Easter was about eggs and candy. But it's more than that. It's about hope. The hope that this life isn't all there is. That dying isn't the end. It's a new beginning.
And I'm supposed to be happy and gay.
No matter what hour your clock strikes, it's always Easter, and I'm always your hopping host, Luce Tomlin Brenner. On today's episode, we're going to dive headfirst into the fertile history of Easter and find out where our traditions come from. In modern times, Easter is thought of as a religious holiday that celebrates the resurrection of Jesus Christ. But it may surprise you that many traditions associated with Easter date back to pre-Christian pagan times. Or at least, that's what people have been saying since the 500s. According to the 6th century historian and member of the English clergy, who has the coolest name ever, Saint Bede the Venerable, the English word Easter comes from Eustra, or Ustre, the pagan goddess of spring and fertility. Saint Bede also wrote that festivals celebrating the goddess were common throughout April in medieval Northumbria, which is northeastern England today. A common story explaining the history and iconography of Easter is that this ancient goddess of spring transformed a bird into a hare, and out of what I can only imagine was pure shock, the hare responded by laying colored eggs for her festival. It's not clear whether or not these eggs were chocolate or cream-filled. However, as of this recording, no sources have been found that can trace this story to actual pagan history. For now, it appears this idea started with Saint Bede. So did this goddess really exist? Or is Saint Bede just another dude conflating his own ideas with facts for clout?
So let me spell that out for you. It's actually M-A-N-S-P-L-A-I-N-G.
Scholars have debated both sides. That being said, when we discuss the mythology around this goddess today, we're typically retelling a story that originated with beloved folklorist Jacob Grimm, one of the Grimm's brothers behind many of our commonly told fairy tales, and 19th century writer Adolf Holtzmann. Both men wrote books titled Teutonic, or Germanic, mythology in the 1800s. In Jacob Grimm's 1835 book, he proposed that Eostra must have been a local version of a more widespread Germanic goddess whom he named Ostara. It's impossible to tell if Ostara as a goddess ever existed outside of Grimm's proposal, as there are no ancient stories about her or the transformation of a bird into a hare. Later, in Adolf Holtzmann's 1874 book, he speculated about the origins of the Easter hare, a German tradition from which Americans get the Easter bunny. He associated the already popular Easter hare with the goddess Ostara, which seems to be the first time such a connection was made. He wrote, "The Easter hare is inexplicable to me, but probably the hare was the sacred animal of Ostara, just as there is a hare on the statue of the Celtic goddess Abnoba." Every piece about Ostara, the Easter hare, and eggs were all written post Jacob Grimm and appear to spin out the folklore based on what different scholars surmised at the time, often citing the mythology as ancient, despite the fact that there are really no ancient stories to cite. Is everything we know about Easter a lie?
It's not true. That's impossible.
Well, not exactly. Reese's peanut butter eggs are as delicious as they seem. And speaking of eggs, They are the most obvious symbol of fertility, and spring is when all the cute little animals tend to multiply. So maybe our Easter traditions are not steeped in ancient mythology as much as they're steeped in animalistic desire. Yes, this is your permission slip to refer to Easter as the horniest holiday from now on.
There's an orchid for your mommy and an Easter bonnet too.
Now, let's take a call from the All Bunnies hotline.
Hey, Lucy, this is Andrew. First of all, thank you so much for this podcast. I'm telling you, Easter is my favorite holiday. I just love it. So thank you so much. I'm calling to ask a question. I'm wondering when the tradition started of carrying around Easter baskets. Done that since I was little, and I've always kind of wondered, was it an American tradition? Did it, come from overseas? So I'm just curious. So that's why I called, and happy Easter. And I'm going to go paint some eggs now. Have a nice night. Goodbye.
Wow, thanks so much for that wonderful call, Andrew. I'm so happy to hear that you're enjoying the podcast, and I'm delighted that you brought such a fascinating question to us. Like Ostara, the Easter basket sprung from the folklore spun by Jacob Grimm and his predecessors. The Scientific American proposes that Easter baskets are, quote, filled to the brim with eggs and other treasures, which are symbolic of nests, the epitome of birth and potential. This fertility narrative also fits with the Christian story of Jesus' resurrection, life returning in the springtime. Now, decorating eggs for baskets may have been inspired by the 50 imperial Easter eggs created by Peter Carl Fabergé's company for the Romanov family from 1885 to 1916. Can you imagine hunting for Easter eggs and finding one encrusted with rubies? Score! Now, let's read some Easter mail from one of our baskets. Hello, every bunny down at the It's Always Easter crew. Long-time listener, first time reaching out. I was debating with some friends of mine about what came first, the Easter bunny or the Easter eggs. They believe that the Easter bunny came first because how does one go find Easter eggs if they're not hidden by the Easter bunny? But I think Easter eggs came first because where does the Easter bunny come from? He hatches from an Easter egg, obviously. I felt like you'd be able to resolve our little rift. Thanks, Josh. P.S. Is it true that Easter is just an East Coast thing? I heard that out in California they call it Wester. Also, do you think one day we'll have a really great Easter and it'll be called the Eastest? Thanks again. Josh, the good news is you're both right. The bad news is you're both wrong. They appear to have been created simultaneously by that writer Adolf Holtzmann, who was just improvising from Jacob Grimm's folklore. As you both so confoundingly surmised, you can't have one without the other, so in a way, you actually agree. I hope you and your friends can find a way to mend fences and perhaps use those fences to create a pen for little bunnies and chickens that you can raise together. Sadly, Wester is a pure myth made up by Hollywood. We celebrate Easter out here too. If there are any bunnies out there who celebrate Wester just for fun, write or call in. I'd love to hear about it. Well, chickies, that concludes this episode of It's Always Easter. I want to thank our Patreon eggsters who produce each and every episode and ensure that It's Always Easter stays independent, ad-free, and sustainable. If you want to join us every month for egg hunts, movie nights, and springtime stories, click the link in our show notes to sign up. There you can also find links to buy merch and to follow us on Instagram. This episode of It's Always Easter was written, researched, and performed by me, your hopping host, Luce Tomlin Brenner, with contributions from our baskets, Andrew and Josh. The theme music, editing, and sound design is by Pete Burns. Thanks, Pete. Make sure to rate, review, and subscribe to It's Always Easter on Apple Podcasts so that other like-minded bunnies can find us. You can also subscribe on the NPR One app where you can tell Ira Glass that you love us. Thanks for listening to yet another episode of It's Always Easter, and come back next time, unless you're too busy multiplying.